please post the colors.
Mr. President.
Mr. Marshall.
Shall we pray? Blessed One, Mother Protector and Father Provider, may the effects of uttering your name direct our lives. And in this moment, we can sense your presence through the kiss of the sun, the caress of the wind, and the melody of the birds, as well as the human embrace of each other. May we always remember that you are a very present help. You are Emmanuel, God with us. Amen.
Please be seated. Welcome to the 131st Commencement exercises of Doane College. I'd like to thank the Doane Concert Band under the tremendous leadership of Dr. Jay Gilbert for playing at our commencement this afternoon. Thank you. We gather here on campus in the Castle Open Air Theater for this commencement to honor you. You are our focus today. We celebrate an important moment in your lives, the completion of your Doane degree. For us, this is our highlight. Please take a moment and reflect on all of the experiences at Doane that were particularly meaningful for you. Those experiences that made a difference, not just for you, but for those around you. Think of the deep and enduring friendships that you have forged. Think of the ways in which you have changed and grown. Think of the faculty, the staff, your peers who have mentored you. A Doane education is a unique experience for each student. I would particularly like to welcome one graduate and those who are here to celebrate with him. Crete resident Henry Balls, affectionately known as Fuzz, graduates today. And at 80 years old, he shows us that education is a gift at any age. We are particularly delighted to welcome not only our soon-to-be graduates, but also the multiple generations of their families, many of which have strong and extended Doane connections. We are honored to have you here as a part of our celebration. To the class of 2008, you should be proud. We all are very proud of you. Congratulations. I'd like to ask Dr. Kent Neumeyer to please join me at the podium.
Good afternoon. Our honorary degree recipient and speaker today is arguably one of the most successful graduates produced by Doane College. He is someone who has truly made a mark in his field and beyond. Dr. Kent Neumeyer has demonstrated his expertise in American history, U.S. constitutional and legal history, and early national history through decades of teaching. He is also an author published many times over. His knowledge is recognized on a national level and sought out by scholars and media alike. It is for these accomplishments and his dedication that we honor him today. Dubbed the best and brightest of Dr. Kenneth Rossman's boys, Neumeyer graduated from Doane in 1952. It was obvious to many at that time that he was destined for graduate school and college teaching. After a 2-year tour with the U.S. Army in Japan, he fulfilled his destiny when in 1959 he received a doctoral degree at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and in 1960 began a distinguished career at the University of Connecticut. In 1962, he received the Distinguished Faculty Award from UConn, the first of many honors and awards that would be bestowed upon him. In 1988, he was named Distinguished Alumni Professor, the university's highest honor. After retiring from the university in 1997, he took on his current role as Professor of Law and History at the University of Connecticut Law School. Dr. Neumeyer's written works establish scholarly benchmarks and have won numerous awards. His article, Chief Justice Marshall's Last Campaign, Georgia, Jackson, and the Cherokee Cases, received the Griswold Award for the best article on U.S. Supreme Court for the year, given in 2000 by the Supreme Court Historical Society. His latest book, John Marshall and the Heroic Age of the Supreme Court, won the Jules and Francis Landry Award, given by LSU Press for the year's best book published by LSU Press in the field of Southern Studies. We knew you would go far, Dr. Neumeyer, so it seems natural to read your byline in major history, journals, and law reviews, to hear of your appearance on C-SPAN, to read reviews of your work in the New York Times. Kent Neumeyer, it is an honor to be here with you today.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty, and by vote of the Board of Trustees, and by virtue of the authority vested in me by the state of Nebraska, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, together with all of the rights, privileges, honors, and responsibilities pertaining thereto.
Son, I'm keeping you waiting in the sun. I realize that President Brand, Dean Franklin, faculty members, ladies and gentlemen, parents and friends, and above all, graduates of the class of 2008. I have to thank President Brand, the faculty, and the Board of Trustees for bestowing this honor on me. Can't think of a greater one. Also, I'd like to thank my family, many of whom are here today. They helped me every step of the way, inspired me to do my best. Let me say I'm just deeply touched and humbled by this honor. I feel I should stop right now, go back to the library, get busy to convince myself I really deserve it. I'm doubly honored to have a chance to address the class of 2008. Delivering a commencement address, I have to confess, is not my regular line of work, so I consulted some experts for advice. The one thing they all agreed on emphatically, I guess knowing the inclinations of professors, was to know when to sit down and shut up. Our lawyers arguing before the United States Supreme Court only get a half hour. And when the half hour is up, there's a red light that goes on. The late Chief Justice Rehnquist used to stop lawyers mid-sentence when the red light went off. Well, I don't see any red light here, but I'm reminded of a kinder, gentler method, and one that might come in handy, because I have to warn you, I'm going to lay a little history on you, because that's what I do for a living. This remedy for a long-winded talk originated in the mountains of West Virginia. And the small congregations in the hills of West Virginia used to be besieged with itinerant ministers in the 19th century. And the old boys tended to go on an awful long time. And one congregation developed a marvelous system of shutting them up. They would start humming Amazing Grace. So I'm not sure whether you folks know the tune, but I know Bunny Dudley is someplace there. She promised she'd be ready, just in case you don't know. Well, look, what I have to say in my allotted time is greatly influenced by what I know you've already done by contemplating your years at Doane and planning your next move. You have, I know, thank God, for living in a free country, for dreaming about the future makes some sense, and not in Darfur or Baghdad. And I'm certain you have thanked and hugged your parents and all the good folks who helped you along the way. Probably you were already sorting out the high points and the low points of your last 4 years, victories and defeats, lessons learned. I guarantee you one thing, that these memories that you have will be much dearer years from now. When sorting things out, I trust you ask yourself what you have learned that might guide you on the journey you're about to take. And I'm not thinking about career training, as important as that is. You know, if you're like your fellow Americans, in the course of your life, you will have not one job, but several. You will have moved several times and probably will end up in a place you've never seen before. According to recent demographic data, nearly half of you will change your religious affiliation in the course of your lives. So I reckon you better hang loose, even if you don't know quite sure what your life's work's going to be. And remember, serendipity has its uses. But you should also need to know how to take advantage of the unexpected twists and turns. Know when to hold, when to fold. Know yourself, and go with the natural grain. The question of what did Doane learn, what you learned at Doane will guide you through all these changes, I hope. What intellectual currency will be good tender in every place you go. What did you learn that will help you choose the right road to take and get you over the rough places that I'm sure will happen? Give you some perspective on your life. I tell you, when you figure that out, you will have defined a liberal education. A liberal education, in a way, is an education that equips and inspires you to continue your education. But looking back after nearly 60 years, I realized it's this kind of education that Doane gave me. And I have to say, in all honesty, I wasn't much of a candidate for liberal learning when I showed up here in 1948. My dad dropped me off at the men's dorm up there. Hey, you folks travel all over the world at the drop of a hat. You don't think anything about it. But for me, a trip from Central City, Nebraska to Crete was a scary leap into the unknown. I came to Doane because my brother Dan over here said it was the place to go, so I came. I had no idea of what I wanted to do, to tell you the truth, and no notion of what I could do. I thought I might like to coach basketball, maybe. I was thinking of some small town, maybe Ellsworth out there. My friend said, well, Ellsworth has only 25 people and there's no basketball team there. I guess that was the whole point of the thing. You might say I was on Whitman Road. I don't know whether there's any folks here from the Sand Hills, but you're from Whitman? Oh. Anyhow, I was on Whitman Road, and that's where my family originally came from, up in there. If you've ever seen Michael Forsberg's marvelous series of Sand Hill photographs, you will remember how Whitman Road cuts a black swath right through the golden prairie grass, going absolutely nowhere. In fact, it was known as the road to nowhere, and the truth is I was on it. Well, Doane headed me down a new road by teaching me a simple and profound truth, that the life of the mind and the quest for understanding is a good thing in itself. It is also, I'm going to argue today, an essential thing for those who love their country and believe in democracy. Many dedicated teachers and many of my fellow students contributed to this education. But it was Kenneth Rossman, more than anybody else, that made me a believer. And I look around and I see that there are many believers here today. You know, it's really hard to resist telling you what it was like to be in Rossman's history class, but I have to restrain myself. Just let me say that he belonged to a long line of idealists who devoted their lives to Doane and its students. Some of those men and women are here today. And by the way, Don Ziegler, who was one of those dedicated individuals, writes about them in his history of Doane College. It's a superb piece of work, and if you haven't bought a copy of that book, you better get out and get one. I tell you, it will inform and inspire you. Well, with thanks to Doane and Rossman, I gave up basketball for good. I had a PhD in my hand and Doane's liberal education to back it up, and I set out for my first job in Connecticut, teaching American history at the University of Connecticut. I was looking for America, you might say, and maybe hoping to find myself along the way. Turned out to be on-the-job training, and I guess you might say I'm still on the job. In the classroom, I tried to emulate Rossman as best I could. Two things he taught me come to mind today just as they did back in the 1960s when I was getting started. One was Rossman's passionate belief that intellectual engagement would yield truth. Not just about history, but about living. And his truth, moreover, was likely to be nuanced, complex, where the good guys don't always win and where victory itself is often contingent, where things are not always what they seem to be, and not always what we are told they are. Rossman was at war with reductionism, easy fixes, simple-minded answers to complicated problems. You know, in this day of media celebrities, talking heads, opinionated intellectuals, and bloviating politicians, Rossman's message resonates. I think he would tell you young folks to turn off your cell phones for a while, use your noggins, don't trust the pundits, and don't trust the professors. You know, dig in and find out for yourself. Another thing Rossman believed was in young people, like my classmates and me, and like you and yours. By having so much faith in us, he taught us to have faith in ourselves no matter what we ended up doing. He once said to that his students taught him as much as he taught them. You know, we didn't believe him for a minute when he said that, but what he said turned out to be true, at least for me. Some of the most lasting lessons I learned came from my students, and never more so than during the Vietnam War years. The 1960s, when I started to teach, were chaotic years at colleges and universities around the country. As young folks, and some old-timers who turned out to protest the war and to fight for racial justice. The violent suppression of protesters at the Democratic Convention in 1968, some of you folks may have seen on the television, shocked America. And at the University of Connecticut, we had our own awakening when a busload of state police came on campus to break up the anti-war rallies and ended up breaking some heads as well. You know, seeing my students with blood running down their faces was a mind opener for me. All of a sudden, it seemed a long way from small-town Nebraska, where we celebrated civility and believed everything our leaders told us. What was going on in the streets, outside my classroom windows, forced me to look hard at what I was doing inside the classroom. I was lecturing at that time about the miracle of the United States Constitution, the fact that a document framed for a small nation of 4 million people in 1787 was still the governing document of a nation like ours with 300 million people in it. Looking at the smoke over the American cities and the growing radical nature of the protest, increasing harshness of official repression made me wonder about the truth of what I was teaching. Was the Constitution really alive and well, I asked? And yes, it was, and yes, it is. But my argument today is that it needs your help, and for reasons that I'd like to explain now. Well, the students outside my classroom window had a constitutional point to make. It had to do with how we as a people go to war, and how we should go to war if we must go to war. What the Constitution says in Article 1, Section 8, in the plainest of language, is that Congress, that is to say your representatives and my representatives, has the power to declare war. Not the President, not the Supreme Court, but Congress. But my friends, that's not what has happened then or now. The documents show beyond any doubt that LBJ, actually he's a favorite president of mine, a man of tremendous ability, that LBJ in the August of 1964, when he said that the North Vietnamese had begun a military action against America, didn't tell the truth. He said that their torpedo boats attacked an American destroyer in the Gulf of Tonkin. What he did not say was that American commandos had previously carried out raids against North Vietnam. Neither did he say that the attack on the destroyer was largely a fabrication. He later admitted that the North Vietnamese boat could have been shooting for whales, for all he knew. Well, based on what he did say, Congress did not declare war, which would have required an extensive and open debate. Instead, it passed the Bay of Tonkin resolution without debate and with only 2 nays. It was a difficult and costly war. And I dare say some of you folks out here in the audience fought valiantly in that war for the rest of us. You know, there was no declaration of war in the Korean War either. We called it a police action, and neither has there been a congressional declaration of war in Iraq. In Iraq, there was rather a military action initiated by a president, and as in the Vietnam War, military action based on false information. This time it was weapons of mass destruction. And again, there was a simple congressional resolution with no informed debate authorizing the president to wage war. I'm not sure I have to tell you this, but waging war is the most far-reaching, history-altering thing a nation can do. Perhaps it's something our country should do, but the cost of war in human life and human values and civil liberties and economic well-being of our people should be understood by you and me and fellow Americans before we go to war. And that's why the framers of the Constitution placed the power to declare war firmly in the hands of Congress.